Okay, let's start with the marketing plan. So what is a marketing plan? Okay, basically it is, in simple terms, it's how you sell your production. This one, we're going to focus on grain. We're going to give you lots of examples on grain. But a marketing plan is whatever that you produce on your farm, whether it's livestock or maybe there's a vegetable farm, okay? So it's just very simple terms. It's how you're going to sell that product and when you're going to sell it. Okay, so what you have to remember when you do develop that marketing plan is how much you have, when's the best time to sell that, and you really got to know your break-even price. Okay, if you don't know that third component, it's really difficult to try to develop a marketing plan that will fit into your operation. Okay, all righty. So there's two different ways that you can think of a marketing plan. A plan for your old crop and a plan for your new crop. And we'll explain what we mean by the old crop and a new crop. And they're very simple definitions for that. Okay, so when is a marketing plan important? Okay, actually a marketing plan is always important because it's when you have to sell that crop in order to make the most profit for your farm, okay? So it's really important that you, once you make this marketing plan up, that you actually look at it pretty regularly and don't just make it and then put it up on the shelf and let it collect dust, okay? Alrighty, now if you have any questions as we're doing this, let me know, because we can answer your questions as you go as well. All righty. I'm going to put this in presenter mode again. Okay. All righty. So it's really important that you review that marketing plan, especially when there's been some changes in your farm, whether that be a difference in, maybe somebody retired, maybe another child came back. So it's really important that you change it and look at it whenever needed. Okay, so what is a price? Okay, so we're going to go through this because this can be kind of confusing. So this is the basics of what the cash price is and futures and the basis and all that. Okay, so cash price is the futures minus your basis. And we're going to get into help explain what those different components are, the futures and the basis. Okay, so let's start with the futures first. I've been to the Kansas City Board of Trade, okay? So that's what we mean by a futures, and it's traded every day. Have any of you guys been to the Kansas City Board of Trade before?
No.
Okay. It's pretty amazing. If you guys ever have a chance to go there, it's pretty much what you see on the movies. There's people yelling, there's people trading, like every day. So I was kind of amazed. So it is very similar to the stock market. There's a website there that you can go to find the futures prices every day. Okay, and some people maybe get it on their phone as well, and they get a little bleep or they get notice on when the futures changes or the prices at the end of the day. Okay, alrighty. The basis then is the difference between this futures market that's traded every day and what your local elevator is paying for that cash price. Okay, so there's kind of the difference. Up on the board, when you go into your elevator, it's probably going to give you a basis price. Okay, so that's the difference of what the elevator can sell it for, and then the price that they give you is the cash price. So the basis is calculated by your local market based upon what they can sell the grain for, minus then, the rail cars or the transportation costs to get it wherever they have to sell it for, then minus the elevator's handling cost. So any question on that basis? It might be 50 cents, it might be 75 cents, it might be $1.25, but that's a difference between whatever that futures price is up there and what your elevator lists as their cash price that they're paying you. Okay, so a basis can also be described right there as a local barometer for the demand of what that grain is for. Okay, so if they need more and more and more grain, then maybe that futures or that basis is going to be a little bit less. Okay, so here's your basis tool if you want some more information on that. Ag Manager Remember, that is your best friend. Hopefully from your financial series, at least that first part of that email address there, agmanager.info, that is a really, really good place to go to get lots of information, but that's specifically for the basis tool and how that's figured. Alrighty. How to find your local price. Many elevators probably have a website listed for their prices, or you can just simply call your elevator to get those prices. Okay. Here's the things that you will need to create a marketing plan. And this is just basics. And those are kind of the three things that we talked about at the very beginning. Okay. So you need to know how many bushels that you're working with. Okay. Where the elevator, where the grain is stored. And this could either be at the local elevator or bins on your farm, or it could be a combination of both. Okay. Now, here's a difference between, remember what we said, old crop and new crop. And here's very, very simple definitions. Old crop is simply the grain that was harvested the last season. Okay. Old grain. Okay. So it can either be stored in the elevator or in the farm bins. Your new crop then is any grain that would be harvested this next year, or we're going to give an example of maybe corn harvested in the fall, or beans, or milo. Okay, so that would be your new crop. Alrighty. Another thing that you will need to know is when do you need to have the funds, or when is when do you need to sell it? Okay. And that may be based on or dependent on what your loan payments are, or other bills that might need paid. It might be a land payment. It might be machinery payment, okay? So whatever your loan payments or other bills that are due. Okay, so we're gonna give you some marketing plan considerations. The first example that we're gonna go over is your old crop grain that you have stored in an elevator. Okay, so remember this is last year's crop that's stored in an elevator. Okay. So some things that you need to know is when to sell it, how much to sell, and possibly when you sell that, you might divide those bushels that you have into different increments. And so you might make a sale ever so often, or possibly when the price gets to maybe where it's above that break even. Okay, remember what we talked about, wherever that might land. Okay, so if you are storing grain in an elevator, you know that you have to pay storage costs. Okay, so you have to know those things as well when you're trying to put your marketing plan together. Okay, so an example that we're gonna go through first is the old crop corn that you have stored in an elevator. And we're gonna make this pretty straightforward and pretty simple. So we're going to have a farmer that has, for example, 10,000 bushels of old crop corn stored at the elevator. Okay. So here's some possible marketing plans that might work for that 10,000 bushels of your old crop corn that's stored in the elevator. Remember what we said, it might be easier if you divide it in increments. So what we've done here is divide it 4 times, or they're saying sell maybe 2,500 bushels each month over the next 4 months. Okay, so then you have some pretty steady income coming in. Or, like we said, you can maybe sell 2,500 of those bushels each time. That market would increase by maybe say 10 cents. And maybe you're going to set that at the very beginning. Alrighty. So what you've done is you've set that price or that target price that you need to have on your marketing plan. Now, if that doesn't hit it, then you have to be very disciplined, like you would even a home budget, to make some alternative plan, okay? Because as you know, markets don't maybe behave like we maybe want it to. So maybe they're not going to go up. Maybe they're going to go down. So then you're going to have to make some alternative plans as well. Okay. Let's go to a different plan. It's old crop, but it's stored in your own farm bin on your farm. All right. So you're going to have to go through some of these same decisions as if the grain would have been stored in the elevator. So you're going to need to still know when's the best time to sell it and how much to sell. Again, you can maybe divide that into even increments. to make a sale, maybe ever so often, or set that target price again. Okay, but maybe some other things to think about when you're using your farm storage yourself, okay? If you're storing your bushels on your farm, you all know that there is a risk of that grain quality going down, or they call that going out of condition. So then that would result in discounts for your grain quality, okay? Whereas if it's stored in the elevator takes all the risk for that, at keeping that grain in the higher quality, okay? Also, another consideration, if it's stored on your farm, is when can you move that grain, okay? So, because you may have to get more people, you may have to get more equipment, you don't know how far it's gonna have to be hauled. So there's several different things, additional things that you may need to think about if that grain is stored on your farm versus in the elevator. And where to best move that grain to, okay? Maybe you want it in a close elevator, and maybe an elevator 30 miles away is gonna get you a much better price, which would maybe compensate for even the transportation that it would take to get it there. So there's just some more things to think about. Okay, here's an example of your marketing for what you can do that. But the other one was considerations and what to think about. All right, so remember the questions were, when do you have time to move the grain? Where will you move that grain? This is where you're gonna have to do a little homework and compare those prices among your area elevators close to you, okay? So there's a little bit more homework maybe involved. So here's some possible marketing plans that you might think about in storing it on your own farm bin. And I'm just gonna like pull you guys. How many of you store it in the elevator? How many of you store it on your own farm bin, or a combination?
We store it in the elevator.
Elevator, okay.
Combination usually.
Combination, okay. Okay.
The elevator.
Elevator.
Elevator, okay, okay. So maybe a little of both, okay. All right, so a possible marketing plan here is pretty much kind of the same thing. You're gonna sell that 2,500 bushels each month over the next 4 months, or maybe you're gonna sell a quarter of it, or 2,500 bushels when that market increases. Knowing that if you know, that little side note down there, whatever your price target is, you need to have some sort of a plan if that 10 cents increment does not go up. I mean, maybe it goes up 5 cents, maybe it only goes up 2 cents, then what are you gonna do? Are you gonna keep it? Or are you gonna sell it? So that's maybe some other considerations to think about. Alrighty, let's move to the new crop. So remember, this is the crop that's planted in the ground right now that you're gonna be harvesting this fall. So your first thing you might be asking is, well, how am I gonna know how many bushels? So what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to determine those bushels as accurately as you can. And here's a way that you can do that. Okay, simply take your acres times whatever your anticipated yield or your potential yield you think you might be getting. Now that's going to be really hard too. But here's some other ways that you might think about that. Consider your average yield, okay, that you have on your farm, or you consider your crop insurance coverage. And we're going to give you an example of what we mean by that and how you figure that. So knowing your cost of production is very, very critical in this part, because then that's going to help you feel very confident on coming up with that marketing plan on the price, the target price that you're wanting to go towards. So you are the most successful or profitable that you can be. Okay, then you're gonna have to think about where will that grain go once it's harvested. So knowing where that grain go once it's harvested will help you determine how you sell that, okay? So whether you're delivering it directly to the elevator or you're storing it in the farm bins. So it may be a good idea if you know that ahead of time, especially if you're trying to anticipate how many bushels you're gonna have. Just by anticipating that first step up there And then you'll know whether you have to, how much farm storage you have, if part of it needs to go in the elevator or part of it needs to go in your bins. Okay. Any questions yet? Okay.
Sandra,
And
what's
then,
APH up here on the top?
uh-huh.
What is APH for yield?
Oh, that is your average, oh, no, let me think. That is with the FSA office, and if you wouldn't have asked me, I would have known it, and now I just can't remember it. Hopefully by the end of the thing here, I'll remember what that means.
Okay. Just
APH. That
Average
is, it's something with your yield in your FSA that you already have established and set, and you've proven. Average proven something, I think, is what that stands for.
okay, that's good.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Alrighty.
is it actual production history?
That may be it.
I just Googled it, so I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kathleen. Actual production history. Okay. Which that should be in your FSA office. Because you have to prove that, and I think that's what they call it is APH. Okay, thank you. All righty. We're gonna use, here's some examples to go through on your new crop, like we said. So we're gonna go through those calculations to help you determine what your bushels might be. Okay, so we're gonna go with 500 bushels, and they're estimating it to be 100 bushels per acre yield. Now, this is where it's also important. If you have a cash rent, you would have 100% of that. But if your crop share, it's whatever your share is. So remember that point on if you have a crop share or a cash rent. Okay, so they're anticipating 50,000 bushels at the end or this fall when they harvest that. Okay, that insurance guarantee, okay, whether it's 70, 75%, or 80%, whatever that is, this is how you calculate the number of bushels that you would feel comfortable forward contracting. We'll get into a little bit of that. But you simply take the 50,000 times your 70% guarantee, because that is what is covered if you have disaster. That is what would be covered that you would have the 35,000 bushels that you could deliver or get paid on, okay? If you wanted to forward contract ahead of harvest. Okay, any questions on those two things before we go on? Okay, alrighty. So, oops, let me go back real quick. Okay, so the farmer has a 35,000 bushels of new crop corn that might be marketed ahead of harvest because of the 70% guarantee that they feel very comfortable that that would be covered. Okay, alrighty, let's move on very quickly. Okay. Here's some other considerations when you have time to move the grain. Perhaps, and here's a way that you might look at it, perhaps you could move maybe 15,000 at harvest, maybe wait until like January, February to move another 20,000, and that would be your 35,000. So the balance of those bushels, then you would have another one, approximately 15,000 bushels in June or July. So they have kind of moved it in three different times. All righty. Remember, another consideration was where you would move the grain to. This is when you do your homework and you compare the prices among the area elevators. You don't think that there would be that much of a difference, but sometimes there is. I know in this area that there's people that use 4 or 5 different elevators and not the same one all the time. Okay, here's maybe some different marketing plans for this new crop corn. Remember, you have 35,000 bushels, okay? So what they've done is taken 5,000 bushels in 7 increments over the next several months. So you have a pretty much steady stream of income coming in, okay? Or you can sell 5,000 bushels each time. The market might increase by 10 cents. And that's just an arbitrary amount that we kind of threw out there. But remember, again, a little side note, if you are trying to establish some sort of a price target that you're shooting for, You really need to have another plan if you don't get to that, because you know markets are very unpredictable depending on what's happening globally. So you really need to have another plan that if it doesn't go up, if it stays the same, if you're just going to keep selling it over the next several months as well. All right. And then you sell the balance of the bushels after harvest is completed. So you're still going to have some income. Okay. So in summary, it's important to create a marketing plan for selling your production, whatever it is. Okay. Sometimes it's often difficult to sell all the grain at one time. And what we mean by that is it might be easier to divide it up, selling your needs into increments and looking at a selling average, okay? Rather than trying to move all that at one time, okay? Here's some additional resources that are out there. A couple of the first two, and it's in your handouts too, Iowa State have some really, really good marketing plans there for you. And I believe the first one is like a 2-page one. The next one is actually a workbook that takes you step by step of kind of what we went over. And then the last one is actually, and I think I emailed that to you, it's just a simple template handout that pretty much goes through some of the steps that we kind of went through tonight.